By some estimates, up to 70% of the artifacts that we clamor to see in museums all around the world are actually stolen. The underside of a global market that's worth billions. Seth Doane looks at the growing effort to return some of these looted treasures to their rightful owners.
Prepare yourselves, for you will embark on a revealing journey into archaeology. In this one, we look deep into the controversies surrounding renowned archaeologist Zahi Hawass, a key figure in exploring Egyptian antiquities.
If there is evidence of lost civilization, where is archaeology? What is this? And what people write about this are people who sits at home in the air condition, and they write all the theories that no one really can believe.
Having faced much scrutiny and criticism, from allegations of suppressing crucial findings to accusations of corruption, we simply have to ask, are the accusations true? And what secrets could the man probably be hiding from the world? Together, let's unveil the truth behind the curtain of controversy in the world of Zahi Hawass.
We give evidence of all the theories that people talk about it. We say why it's wrong.
As an archaeology enthusiast or one who truly digs the fascinating history behind ancient Egypt, there is no way you wouldn't have heard of the name Zahi Hawass. It could probably be via a Discovery YouTube channel, news media, or even social media. The man simply has a way of making it to the spotlight of every discovery in Egypt. However, as mighty and great a feat as that is, it's believed that he might not have necessarily achieved this greatness following the virtuous route of archaeology. Being an influential figure in the country, he seems to have pulled too many illegal strings to get to the top, and this is somehow not just tainting his name, but leaving his several achievements with a blemished record. At the heart of the allegations against Zahi Hawass is the antiquities smuggling issue in Egypt. However, before we look at his role in all of that, let's closely examine the smuggling channel and the evolution of the smuggling of antiquities in Egypt over the years. The trade or looting of antiquities in Egypt is a practice that goes decades back to when the ages of pharaohs ended. And you can say the channel at which it has been practiced is one of those peculiar to the shadowy underworld side of the nation. After people from various sides of the world had learned of the worth of a piece of ancient Egypt's history, they were willing to lay their hands on them to make a fortune, leading to the continuous exploitation of the land. However, would we say it's okay to refer to smuggling as an exploitation? Well, not really. While we might have boldly used that term in the past decades, we can't call it exploitation now because a few people or natives seem to be encouraging illegal trading. Yes, you heard that right. Unlike before, when Europeans and Americans would casually fly into the country and loot treasures to take back home, they seem to be buying them now from a few of the said Egyptians who are supposed to be protecting the artifacts. How are these natives able to pull it off? Well, they have got power. When you are a person of influence within a certain region, you can easily pull strings and create a lucrative yet ethically dubious industry of smuggling and selling antiquities. And that seems to be what is happening in Egypt. It's fair to say the rate at which antiquities smuggling occurs is alarming, especially with a secretive network seemingly navigating the complex corridors of power. With hands pointed to people as powerful and influential as Zahi Hawass being an accomplice in a vast network, Egypt might be at risk of losing its cultural heritage in a couple of decades. This absence of rigorous oversight might be a blind spot for many local wrongdoers driven by financial motivations. If there's one thing we learned, it is that the Arab Spring did help to reduce the smuggling and looting of artifacts in Egypt. This was mainly because it led to an evident boost in the country's commerce. For those who might not know, you might wonder what the Arab Spring is. Well, don't worry, we get to fill you in. The Arab Spring is more like an epical series of pro-democracy uprisings that swept the Arab world from 2010 to 2011. At the time, there was a seismic shift in the political landscape due to unemployment, socioeconomic grievances, and a desire for political freedom. And so the advent of the Arab Spring spread to all affected places, from Tunisia to Cairo. For places like Egypt, it was truly a historic moment. We had mass protests and unyielding demands for change. Because the Egyptian president, Hosni Mubarak, couldn't withstand the pressure, He stepped down from power to pave the way for a democratic and favorable government. Since then, we can say the economy of Egypt has truly blossomed to become what it is today. Yet another powerful guardian that has emerged to help fight against the illicit trade of antiquities and artifacts in Egypt is social media. Compared to the olden days, the world has become more interconnected. Thanks to platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even YouTube, which can serve as virtual watchtowers, it's easier for vigilant citizens, archaeologists, and authorities to share information on suspicious activities. And this is a big hindrance for the shadowy world of smugglers. With news, images, and alerts spreading like wildfire, they have to make extra efforts to hide their footprints, slowing down the smuggling pace. In all, we can't help not to mention our eyes in the skies, the satellites. They've also become an invaluable sentinel in the fight against antiquities, smuggling, and looting. How do they do that? Well, they do so by rendering a comprehensive view of archaeological sites, enabling the identification of illicit activities that might elude people on the ground. Most times, all it takes is a comparison of two pictures taken on sites, and one can tell if there's a fishy activity going on in a particular site. There might indeed have been a reduction in the smuggling of antiquities in recent years, but don't be deceived. Smugglers are very active in establishing ways their shadow network would bypass all the measures in place. This takes us to the money involved in the smuggling business. How much do you think these people make in the artifact smuggling business? It's not a small sum. The smuggling market thrives on the insatiable global demand for historical treasures. Most times, the price tags attached to these stolen artifacts can reach thousands to hundreds of millions of dollars, depending on how rare the artifact is. Imagine a rare artifact like the Rosetta Stone, for instance. Can you imagine the amount of money top collectors would pay to lay their hands on? It could go as high as $100 million or more in an auction market. With money like that, it's pretty easy for smugglers to fund their dubious endeavors. They could solve their problem of concealed transportation, bribe their way through authorities, and more. On the other hand, it means bad business for the nation, especially in the tourism sector. No artifacts on display simply mean no revenue whatsoever, and no revenue could also mean a decline in total generated revenue. So you see, it poses a serious problem. Then again, with Egypt being the central hub for a treasure trove of artifacts and antiquities, how much more do you think they have before they run out? Well, it's safe to say that with the landscape of Egypt constituting a large landscape buried under dunes of sand, there's still a whole lot to be discovered linking it to the ancient Egyptian civilization. Dr. Zahi Hawass posited that only 30% of artifacts had been found. Although, with the man theorizing the number, not everyone seems to believe it is true. And you wouldn't blame anyone, owing to the allegations surrounding him. Not to mention the widespread looting saga during the Arab Spring. Yes, you heard that right. While the Arab Spring bore good fruits in Egypt, looters made good use of the chaos and uprising of the movement to break into the Egyptian Museum on Tahrir Square. As a result, around 18 artifacts were stolen from the museum. Still, that's not the only place that was vandalized. Several other archaeological sites commissioned by antiquities dealers were also vandalized and desecrated, and this led to the loss of quite a lot of artifacts. In all its entirety, it's quite fair not to allocate a certain number to the number of Egyptian artifacts. The truth is that many of the artifacts remain at large, with several of those looted, documented and undocumented scattered all across the globe. And so the quest to unveil the extent of Egypt's archaeological wealth continues. What do the bigwigs and top investigators have to say about Egypt's illegal antiquities trade? Well, if there's one thing that the Egyptian government has proven, it is that they wouldn't be quiet while the country's heritage is slowly stripped away. To curb the problem of smuggling and looting of artifacts in the country, they set up the Antiquities Repatriation Department in 2002. This department aims solely to reclaim and preserve the nation's cultural legacy. That said, their duties go way beyond the borders of the nation. They are meant to recover all loot or illegally acquired Egyptian antiquities worldwide, using all legal power vested upon them. Aside from seeking justice for the stolen treasures, the department also contributes to the global effort in combating illicit trade and promoting ethical practices in archaeology. The head of the Antiquities Repatriation Department, Shaban Abdul Gawad, was happy to share the progress and achievements of the department over the years. In an interview, he affirmed that over 10,000 pieces have been repatriated since the department was founded. According to the man, they could only achieve this feat by collaborating with the authorities in market countries. One of such countries is Switzerland. They reached a bilateral agreement in 2010 concerning the illicit import and transit of antiquities. It wasn't long before the United States and the department signed a memorandum of understanding. Then they reached agreements with Spain, France, Italy, and others. These agreements are what aided them in their endeavor. However, that's not all. It so happened that the department posted several officers who would scan all planned sales of all major auction houses. As a trophy for their hard work, they recovered a tablet carved with the cartouche of King Amenhotep I, one of those relics truly deemed a national treasure. Apart from the department's active participation in the recovery of looted artifacts, there has been a reformation in the law governing antiques in Egypt. In 1911, the law initially stated that foreign excavation missions could take half of the excavated objects out of Egypt. However, in 1951, the law changed, stating that export licenses were mandatory for every item leaving Egypt. The government pointed out their right to withhold any object depending on its uniqueness to even depict how strict the law became. It was in 1983 that the antiquities law was sealed. Under this law, antiquities can no longer be exported from Egypt. In truth, it's truly one of those strict laws by the country, but we can say it's somehow justified owing to the looting and stealing that the country has faced over the years. Like the department, UNESCO has also played a big part in transforming smuggling practices from what they used to be. The body celebrated its 50th anniversary in the International Convention Against Illicit Traffic of Cultural Property in 2020, a movement meant to provide a framework for theft prevention and the return of stolen cultural property. In collaboration with the Ministry of Culture, UNESCO hosted a global symposium in 2013 with a primary emphasis on collaboration and restitution. The event convened 80 national experts and featured 20 international speakers from Asia, Europe, and the US, along with representatives from key art organizations such as Interpol, Unidroit, UNODC, Musée Guimet, and Christie's Auction House. During this assembly, recommendations were formulated regarding the optimal utilization of international frameworks and strategies for repatriating cultural property to its original location, and it's been efficient over the years. Many artifacts have returned home alongside government-funded departments like Egypt's Antiquities Repatriation Department. Katie Paul, a DC-based anthropologist and one we could see as the hound in Egypt's illegal antiquities trade, had her insights to share after years of investigation. According to her, based on analysis, there have been roughly 2,000 seizures of Egyptian antiquities in ports worldwide, and she believed the traffickers were large and had arms to shut up the authorities. For Miss Paul, villagers would sell their lands to the mafia due to economic desperation as they failed to consider the finding as a boost of tourism in the country. That aside, her findings also encroached on social media platforms. Apparently, on Facebook, people were becoming daring enough to create content on how to do one's illegal excavation. It seemed to garner over 50,000 members in a year, showing the many people willing to commit crimes. In addition, Katie Paul, an anonymous source deeply entrenched in the covert world of illegal antiquities trading, offered a perspective to the press. According to them, the authorities safeguarding these artifacts were implicated in smuggling. From inspectors to military personnel, a significant majority allegedly had dirty hands, engaging in dubious activities for extra gain. However, this isn't surprising. If we recall, we posited this theory earlier in this video. So this goes an extra way to pinpoint the accuracy of the posited theory. However, we are particular about the role that Zahi Hawass plays in all of this. How did he ever get involved for him to be so much painted in a bad limelight? We get to find out as we advance in this video. What led to Zahi Hawass becoming entangled in this web of allegations? Right before Zahi Hawass became entangled in what appears to be a mess in his career, he was one of those figures straight out of an adventure book. Born on May 28, 1947, It was more like he was born for the archaeology realm, as he appeared passionate about unraveling the mysteries of ancient civilizations, and he just couldn't get enough of his documentaries. Eventually, he climbed up the ladder to become the Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities in Egypt, further expanding his dominance not just in the field, but in the country's political landscape. This is probably where he got power drunk. When he stepped down from power, the one referred to as the real Indiana Jones started to have holes in his past stories. For one, foreign archaeologists started reporting how he was bullying them, stealing their discoveries, and working in broad daylight. Most just had to give up due to resistance, only to see their research or discovery on the screen in the latter days. Even at that, saying that wouldn't be enough to put Zahi Hawass in the limelight. It all started when he was charged in court for corruption in 2013. He was accused of being an accomplice to the pilfering of rock samples that occurred in April 2013 inside Egypt's largest pyramid, the last of the 7 wonders of the ancient world to remain relatively intact. He did this alongside 3 Germans, whose aim was to prove that the pyramid wasn't the final resting place of the pharaoh Khufu. And how did they go about it? In a truly unconventional way, they scraped off part of the pyramid cartouche. They took it back to Germany for testing, completely off the Egyptian books. It caused an international uproar then, and the men had to be tried in court. Even though the samples were later sent back, the Egyptian government went through trouble finding the 5 officials responsible for the heist. Still, all of them had their fingers pointed at Zahi Hawass. However, when the charges were laid against him, he said, "There is nothing against me." Eventually, the charges were dropped, but the story remained unclear in the eyes of many. That aside, there's also the mystery of Nefertiti's tomb. Many have continuously searched for the queen's tomb, but haven't been successful in their endeavors. Each time they think they have found it, it turns out to be an entirely different mummy of lesser interest. It's safe to say that finding Nefertiti's final resting place would tell a story of the beautiful queen and help us envision the ancient civilization under the rule of Pharaoh Amenhotep IV. So it's one of those missing keys not disposed to the archaeological realm, and word say Zahi Hawass has it. In the Valley of the Kings, Zahi Hawass reported finding 2 unique mummies separated from the rest in the valley. Tagged as KV-21A and KV-21B, Zahi Hawass believes that one of the mummies is most likely to be the mummy of Nefertiti. So he promised to give feedback in October 2022 after running a proper DNA test on the mummy. However, years have passed, and the world has not heard anything concerning the unknown mummies. According to the theory, they are saying that it's possible that Zahi Hawass might have found something quite spectacular and concealed it to himself, further to the shady nature of the man. Amidst all the allegations and conspiracies levied against Zahi Hawass, looking at his achievements on the surface, we can say the man has impacted the Egyptian archaeological realm. Indeed, we might not be able to confirm if it's all an act for a dubious underground scheme. Still, one thing is certain: Zahi Hawass has truly played a pivotal role in Egypt. That said, we can probably try a little bit to see him in a clear light. Thanks for joining us to explore Zahi Hawass's controversies, the shadow that dims his career. While we still look forward to unraveling the various conspiracy theories in the archaeological realm, do like, subscribe, and tell us what you think in the comments section.